Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I, of course, am Carl, and we are back to give you another episode of Vacuum Exposition. Now, before we get started, I did want to address a couple things. I have been asked by a few viewers over the past couple weeks to redo some videos, not because of the quality of the video, but they just wanted to see the vacuum again. And to that, I don't want to say that I'll never do a video of something again after I've done a video on it. For instance, when I did the video on the Eureka 2300 series, all the Wild Moss set, that was a special occasion, and I brought all those machines out, even though I did a video on the 2375 over a year earlier. But I did want to address it because I have had a couple of requests to do videos over on some things, and I love to get my stuff out as much as the next collector. But in terms of doing multiple videos on something, unless there's a reason why it's a lot of work to get these videos all together. And well, I mean, when it comes to the information, it's already there in the previous video. So now, if you have a new idea and you want me to compare a machine that I've done a video on to something different that I may have not done a video on yet, then that would be really cool. I think that'd be a really cool video. But for those that have been watching that do love seeing my stuff to the point that they want to see it again, definitely keep watching. Stay tuned. There will be way more videos, and who knows, you may even see that machine that you want to see a video on in another video. So, but enough with the housekeeping stuff. So for today, of course, we will be looking at another really cool machine that I have pulled out of my collection. And it is one that I've been wanting to make a video for weeks now. I've been getting the information and the ads, as well as just kind of the history on this particular machine for the past few weeks in my spare time. And I think it is finally time that it gets its moment in the limelight. So without further ado, let's get on to our video for today and take a look at another really cool vacuum. Well, everybody, we got something interesting. And before you ask, I know what you're thinking, what this might be. Now, no, it is not an oxygen tank. I know these resemble them quite a lot, but I assure you it is not. It is, in fact, a vacuum cleaner, and it is, in fact, one that is quite rare. I have a lot of rare machines in my collection, so this is not out of the ordinary for me to say, but it is a very interesting machine that I thought really deserved a video today. Now, before we get into this machine, I want to take you back to the year 1955. Now, it is an interesting year because 1955 was 70 years ago this year. Now, that particular year marks an interesting anniversary. Not only do we have things like, well, the tri-power Chevys came out with their 3 carburetor setups. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But 1955 was a huge year for cars, and as well as things were going in the United States. Of course, very similar to what we were talking about in the last video. Last one was made in 1996. That's when my brother was born. This one, being 1955, was when my dad was born. So he celebrates his 70th birthday this year, and we plan on doing some fabulous fun times with him. So it is interesting that we have a couple machines that, well, kind of hold true to some important dates in my world. So, but let's get on to the machine. So what we are looking at here is a 1955 Kenmore KenKart Model 705. Now, as you can see, this thing just perfectly depicts the 1950s. We have chrome, we have wild colors, we have big wheels on the side, we have rocket-shaped items, we have a fancy colored handle and all that great stuff. Now, I'll tell you what this reminds me of from 1955, and I'll show you a picture of it right here. So what you're looking at in that picture is a 1955 Chevy Bel Air. The very first year of the tri-power engines that they were introducing. that were known and coveted in the Chevrolet world. This one just happened to be in the same color combo as this particular vacuum cleaner. So basically, back in 1955, maybe you caught a windfall. You made yourself a big pile of money. Maybe you sold a company or a project, and you were living high on the hog. So you went over to the local Chevy dealership. You bought yourself a brand new Chevy Bel Air. You got it in two-tone green because that just sets you aside from everybody else in their reds and blues. So you went home, you showed the wife the new car, and you said, hey, what do you say? Let's go off and get you a new sweeper because, well, maybe you guys were just using something from the 30s still, and it was on its last legs. You went into Sears, of course, because that's where you went. And you saw these fancy things there. You said, hey, matches my car. You and your respective other were there, you looked at it, you said, that is what we need to get. So you brought it home. Now, the interesting thing about this, the fascinating thing I think about with this, as well as the 1955 Chevy Bel Air, well, those were 1 year only body styles. Same thing with this. Now, there were similarities to following models or models prior to this, but it was a different vacuum for this 1 year. Now, Kenmore, back in this time frame, they had something called the Kenmore Commander. It was a bullet-shaped rocket vacuum cleaner, and it was really cool. I have several of them in my collection, but this particular style was super popular in the mid to late 40s into the 50s. Now, with the 705, it was an adaptation. I think that Sears at the time, or well, Bertman Electric, who was building these particular vacuum cleaners, who had built vacuum cleaners for Sears for years. I'm talking back into the early 40s, even the 30s. Bertman Electric was making uprights as well as canisters for Sears Roebuck. So when they got to be towards the end of their time frame with them, well, they needed to introduce one more model before, well, they went on to a drastically different. Now, 1956 was when we started seeing a lot more of the Lady Kenmore products. And by Lady Kenmore, I mean they introduced the whole line in pink. They had this beautiful Kenmore crest that went on each of their machines. I have a floor polisher from that era. But the replacement to this machine in 1956 was a drastic difference, and I'll show a picture of it right here. Now, as you can see, this is quite a bit different. It's a lot more boxy. You get kind of what they called that boomerang type logo on it. And overall, it was just a drastic leap in designs that continued on for Kenmore for quite some time. Now, that doesn't mean that this machine wasn't special. Now, when this was introduced in 1955, Kenmore was introducing the very last of this rocket bullet style commander canister, and thus was closing out that design. However, this is a 1 year only model, like I said, just like the Chevy, because of the top of the canister. Now, the main body of the canister is the same. So, the main components of the motor, the switch, all of that, exactly the same. The top of this, however, now, normally these would have had a very conical cone shape that would have gone on the top, in which case the hose would have gone straight down in. Now, if you are using a vacuum cleaner and your hose points straight up, well, you're not vacuuming directly above you, so that's going to cause a lot of undue stress on the hose. So a lot of the time, even though the hose connector would go in straight down, the hose itself would bend and thus create problems. You would break the hose, you would have leaking issues. And being as that these are actually a cloth braided hose, they didn't have very good suction out of the box usually. However, that definitely hurt them. So what did Kenmore do? They made a different top for the canister that was flat, but it had an angle out the front because, of course, you're going to be using your vacuum on the floor, and as the hose kind of continues to the vacuum, going in at almost an angle down, it actually made for a way better design and thus made this a more preferable for a lot of people. However, this is still a very rare model because it was only offered 1 year. Now, as you probably could see with that picture of the 1956 model, the hose connection was at the front, similar in this way. And thus, that machine was very popular in that way. Now, this machine also had a difference in the attachment style, and we'll get onto that in a little bit. But in addition to the vacuum itself, this had what they called the KenKart. Now, the KenKart is what most people associate as being the most like, well, a oxygen tank cart, unfortunately. As you can see, it does pretty much resemble it. Has two big wheels on the back and one little caster up here at the front, so you can maneuver it around. Um, Now, this machine did come with a attachment holder that would have gone on the back. However, that was gone when I got it. Now, there's probably a good reason for that. The attachment holders for KenKarts were all fabric. Even going back to the earlier ones from the mid to late 40s, all of those were a fabric material with just regular, almost like a burlap type material that held in the attachments. I have one that has the attachment set on it. However, that one was so badly frayed and so badly worn that I was able to repair it. However, if I tried to sew it, it would just basically tear the material. So it is put back together as best as I can to preserve it. However, it is not in the best of shape, but that particular example is going to be another video. I actually am really excited to bring that one too because it has its own cool story. But with this one, it would have probably had another one of those fabric ones. My guess is they probably tore, and after they tore, you really couldn't hold the attachments in it anymore. So the next best thing was to just take it off and then, tighten back up the bolts, and everything was peachy keen, hunky dory. And you would have just had a sack you would have put your attachments in. This one actually had the attachments inside the machine. I know that a lot of people ended up doing that with vacuum cleaners that didn't have attachment caddies. So that unfortunately is missing on this one. However, as far as I am concerned, it is perfect the way it is. For display piece, it is amazing. So getting on to the rest of this machine, the KenKart itself. Why did we use it? Of course, it was easier for us to maneuver these vacuums around. Normally, this would have been on the floor sideways, and you would have had to pick it up kind of like a suitcase and carry it around with you, or have it follow you around. With the actual KenKart, it could still follow you around, but it was a lot easier to carry, a lot easier to manage. And like I said, you were able to keep all your attachments together with it, so it thus made for almost like an upright with onboard tools in that regard. Now, how you would have changed the bag. This particular machine, as well as a lot from that era, had what they called a shakeout or dump bag. Now, what I mean is if you take the top of this off, which thankfully it made for a very easy setup, so you just undone these two latches, and then all of a sudden, there's the top all the way off, makes for an easy removal. And then you would have had this. Now, this would have been your bag setup. It's a fabric bag, another kind of a canvasy material like what the attachment caddy would have been made of. And when you would have been done using the vacuum, you would have simply taken it over to your garbage can and just dumped out the contents, put it right back in. Now, many vacuum cleaners use this design. And like Electrolux, obviously Kenmore, and many, many others would have used a dump bag setup just because it was just so simple. Paper bags for canister vacuum cleaners wouldn't come out for quite a while once Electrolux was more prevalent in them with the Model 60 and things like that. But this particular example of this machine, at least, still came with it, and honestly, I really like the idea of it. Now, I grew up with using a Electrolux Model 30, which used a bag setup like this, and it was phenomenal. It was so much more enjoyable to use. You just went around, you vacuumed, and then you dumped it out, and you were done. You didn't have to worry about it. Now, I don't have the allergies as some other people do, so that does make things a little easier in that regard, but I can totally tell why paper bags came out for canisters for that reason. Now, while we have the top off, I'll show kind of what it looks like up here. I know I said it was flat, but really it kind of has a little bit of a cone on here, but it reads Kenmore in the same matching paint of the body of the machine, which I just absolutely loved. When I polished this thing up, I was very, very careful not to damage anything, but it was just such a cool look that I had to mention it when we did the video. Now, getting on to the actual hose itself, like I said, this is technically a canister, so the hose, obviously this is an original hose for this machine, but it would have been kind of a light turquoise with some dark teal hash marks that went all the way up, which unfortunately the hose isn't in the greatest of shape suction wise. I know there's ways that you can get around it by like putting plastic wrap all around the hose to kind of seal it up a little bit more, but this isn't a daily. It's not going to be a daily. It's a museum piece. It's honestly going to be on display or maybe the occasional run across the floor, so I'm not worried about the hose, and I don't want to make it look weird by putting plastic wrap all over it. So to enjoy it in its originality, I will be leaving it just the way it is. But even in something from 1955, we still had a suction relief valve. So if you had a clog, you would open this up and at least then it would save on the machine. So that is the Kenmore KenKart from 1955, the Model 705. Now, you may be asking, Carl, how did you find out that this was only a one-year only machine? Well, I do a lot of research. I go through each and every catalog I can get my hands on, which is why I was able to find the ad for this machine. And there is a website that actually has a lot of the different Sears, Montgomery Ward, JCPenney's catalogs from the day. And I was actually able to find the ad for this machine, which I'll show right here. And as you can see, it is the same one. And if you read into the fine print there a little bit, you can actually see where it describes that this is a two-tone teal or turquoise colored machine, solidifying the validity of the machine itself. So 1 year only, unfortunately. But either way, that was kind of how it went. Now, in terms of the attachments, now I didn't get the full set of attachments, which is okay. I wasn't really counting on a whole lot just because when I saw this machine, I really just wanted it for what we had here for the display. But it actually did come with the floor nozzle or floor tool. So as you can see, this is a standard Kenmore floor tool design. They use this for, I swear, 30, 40 years. That came with machines going back into the 40s all the way up through the 60s, and I believe even the 70s they did have some of these still floating around on some of their models. In addition to that, we also had this upholstery tool. It is kind of funny because on the floor tool, we had these kind of ribs that look almost like a suction relief, where on this one, we actually had ribs as well, but they're kind of superficial. They're not really, they don't do anything. They're just for style. And I love it when something is done just for style on any type of a vacuum, just because it shows that we took pride in it and had a lot more to offer in terms of our homes. So, but that is the Kenmore KenKart from 1955. It is a super cool machine. I did get it from a good friend of mine, Mr. Jared, down in Oregon. Received this kind of recently from another collector. And in his purging of machines, this was one that he let me have. So I am very, very happy with this because it was one that definitely has been on my list. It did need some repairs on it. It had some loose bolts or missing bolts in a couple of places. So with a little bit of ingenuity and some elbow grease, we got this thing looking really, really nice. So, well, let's get on to our run demo for today, and we'll see how this thing does and what kind of section we get out of it. So let's get to it. Well, everybody, we have got the old 1955 Kenmore 705 KenKart canister vacuum cleaner, all ready to go and plugged in. This machine actually does have a replacement cord on it. Unfortunately, at some point, the original cord, well, they have the tendency to dry out and dry rot, and thus become more of a safety hazard. So I have the original ends for it if I ever have the ability to make a new cord, but it did have a replacement cord put on it that had to be modified because they kind of go into a little circular socket on the machine. But it is all ready to go and it does run fabulous now. So let's get on to our run demo and see how this thing does. Well, the old Kenmore 705 did fantastic. Even with an older braided fabric hose, this thing definitely still had plenty of suction. I did want to do some close-ups for you guys just to show you how much it's really pulling the carpet fibers back up into that hose. Just because, well, I mean, this machine was top of the line in terms of canister vacuum cleaners in 1955 in Sears, towards, well, I guess the later part of the year. But I also do have some extension wands that will work with this particular machine. I just didn't want to get them out just because it was, I felt that it was a little bit more necessary to do some close-up vacuuming instead of the far stuff, just because you can't really see it very well when I'm standing up and far away. But either way, I hope you enjoyed a little run demo for today. Well, everybody, thank you all again for joining us today for another fantastic episode of Vacuum Exposition. This was one, like I said, I've been looking forward to doing a video on for quite some time since I brought it back from my latest trip to Eugene to visit my good friend Jared. Now, when I first brought it home, it was not running because I think the cord needed some adjustments or something. Unfortunately, this isn't the original cord, but it was one that was made to work. However, it did need some further modification so that it would work in the terminal that it plugs into on the machine. But we were able to get it up and running and doing everything it needed to do. So I've always thought of these machines kind of like the way that they were originally advertised as, well, a rocket. So, I mean, when you think of a rocket, you don't think of it laying down necessarily. I mean, maybe you do when it's flying through space, but this machine was more so to look like a rocket that's like on the launch pad, so it's ready to take off. I absolutely love that. I was a huge fan of the space race history and everything that went around that. So this was a really fun one to do, as well as just to get out and run. Of course, it is one that I will not be getting rid of anytime soon because it was one that I got from a friend of mine. Generally speaking, I keep anything that I get from good friends of mine. So either way, it was a very, very cool one to be able to get out and show you guys and document, because there's really not very much out on some of these earlier Kenmores like this one. So this being a 1 year only model, I definitely wanted to get it out, document it, and put it out there for you guys. So you were able to kind of learn more about the history of these things. Now, I, of course, have another one of these, as well as many, 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 many more Kenmores in my collection. So this will not be the last one we look at in terms of the brand, but we definitely will have a lot more in the future. So, but this was a really fun one to make. I'm really glad that I was able to get it out and show you guys. I hope you all enjoyed learning a little bit more about, well, a time period gone past, one that I, of course, have fallen in love with. As a historian myself, the 50s were absolutely one of my favorite generations, so having one more piece of it is obviously something I treasure and cherish. So, but anyways, I hope you guys all enjoyed our little video today. And of course, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We will be back, of course, same time next week with the same guy in the same place, but maybe with a different vacuum or vacuums. And we'll catch you guys again later. Have a great rest of your day, y'all.